Hey guys, so it's been a minute, but as some of you know, I went to Puerto Rico to kind of reconnect to my soul and to my island and my people, and it was really, really nourishing. I needed it. So as you see today, I got my hoops, I'm repping squad. But it was really important for me to go and feel connected to my culture. I was born in Bronx, New York. So I'm actually technically New Rican, which means, well, for me, it means that I don't know Spanish. I can understand some of it, and I can speak much more than I think, but I get so nervous about not being able to speak it fluently that I most of the time just say I don't know it. But when I do practice, I know a lot more than I think I do. It's just the nerves that get to me. But I'm gonna be better. So I kind of wanted to talk about a little bit of the trip, but more importantly, on the state of Puerto Rico and questions around statehood and support and the financial crisis. And I don't want this to be like a long, drawn out thing or video. I want it to be concise and kind of lay out what I've learned, what I've read, what I've heard. Because I'm New Rican, I, for a long time, like, get nervous around issues or when people are talking to me about Puerto Rico because I wasn't raised there. And I am a staunch believer that you should ask the people who are going through the thing how they feel before you ask politicos or experts or anyone else their opinions on something. And so, being that I, of course, anyone can look up articles on the state of Puerto Rico, the question over statehood, the disaster of Hurricane Maria, its effects, Trump, and lack of support for our people and being seen as second-class citizens. But that is not informing me of the nuances that people are feeling in those as being a talking point, because that's what we are right now. Which is odd because we were never a talking point before. I actually very distinctly remember Puerto Ricans and general Latin people being just grouped into other people's categories and labels as they saw fit. And it was kind of like based geographically, right? Like if I'm in New York, then there's a bunch of Puerto Ricans and Dominicans. If I'm in Texas, there's where all of those Hispanic Latin people are Mexican. If I'm in Miami, then there's actually diversity, so we get to claim that, and there's actually a lot of pride around your culture and what island you're from, right? Or city or country, whatever, because there's so much more here. And we have so much more space to embrace and allow it and accept it. But on the topic of Puerto Rican statehood, I have kind of shied away from it because, again, I don't feel as though I have a say or I have a stake in it, and I shouldn't, is kind of how I've been operating. And I didn't have enough information or context from the people as I would feel comfortable before speaking on something. And because I am Puerto Rican, but youth organizing in the political sphere, I get asked that a lot, and my thoughts around organizing Puerto Ricans who are there on the island, but mostly Puerto Ricans who are moving to Florida, Orlando, which is, I think, now the biggest population of Puerto Ricans, even over New York. And so on my trip, I made sure to make it a priority to ask people that question. And my question was, what do you think about Puerto Rico becoming a state? That was it. I didn't give them any more context or say anything else. That was it. And I got a lot of, and this is not me summarizing or putting words in anyone's mouth, but what does it matter? Because there is a distinct history that the people of Puerto Rico are very well aware of being exploited by political pawn, and being a political pawn to whatever political force at the time is interested in Puerto Rico. So they very well understand that you talking about, or for example, former governor Ricky, because him talking about Puerto Rico becoming a state and ending colonial rule is really about him advancing his political stature, which is not going to work anymore because now he's resigned over text messages that were leaked showing how terrible of a person he is. And so the question of statehood is seen as just a political talking point. They don't think anything's going to happen. There's been 5 referendums and nothing has happened before. So why is it going to change now? That is the overall perception. On top of this, we don't understand why we're even having this conversation, because we hate Trump and Trump hates us. So he's not gonna want us to be a state. And we don't think that we would actually get the support we need. There's some people who, and I think this goes more toward, our need. This speaks to our need to engage. And when I say our, I mean my fellow Boricuas, Boricuas that have family on the island, that live on the island, that have family who don't live on the island but are deeply tied to it still. We need to do a better job at investigating and challenging the options that they're giving us. From the referendums, from different policy suggestions, it has been 1, become a state, 2, stay as a commonwealth, or 3, be independent, free association. And you can do, that means a lot of things. Free association can almost mean develop what you want it to be developed, but you're on your own. And when we hear politicians talking about becoming a state, they frame it in a tricky way, because they frame it as though becoming a state is how we end the hundreds of years of colonial rule that Puerto Rico has seen from the United States. So somehow that topic, that conversation goes from, we hate our overlords, but we're not going to let them take advantage of us, so we're going to be one of them. But it's working. It's really working, y'all. Like, people are really out here like, oh yeah, we should be a state because, we've been a territory for so long, and they should recognize us and give us the respect we deserve and also support us in these ways. And that's BS. That's just BS. I'm just gonna call it. It's BS. Because if you ask me, I feel like we should just be like, listen, here are the receipts for all the shit you fucked up with. Here's all of the ways you fucked us up. This is what we demand to be free. So, like, we're gonna be free. We're gonna, hey, fuck y'all. We're gonna go over here, preserve our culture, build back up our island and our people through self-empowerment. But we demand money in place of the exploitation, corruption that United States fiscal control boards, corporations, companies have all used the island for, and therefore left it with nothing left to build. I think that that is a decent command. I think that that is literally what we should be, that's the conversation we should be having. Not, oh, do we want to be a state? Do we not want to be a state? It should be, no, we're not going to be a state because y'all are fucking up. Y'all don't even like us. We're going to preserve our culture. And we would, y'all can come visit and we'll be allies. But what we really need is the money and resources you took away from us to be returned so that we can build our island. And that's how I feel. Like, we're not having that conversation. We're not even close to there because these politicians are giving us a false option of statehood is the only way we end colonial rule, which is not true. And then on the other hand, there is a fear that if we become free, Puerto Rico doesn't have the infrastructure to gracefully manage that transition. And there is an honest, genuine fear from the people about the politicians in Puerto Rico who are holding power, be it good or bad, and their ability to do their job for the people. Because politics is politics, and politics in Puerto Rico is just as corrupt and self-aggrandizing. So it's all about their party. And to make it worse, Puerto Rico being as small of an island is highly, I like to call it kind of like they like to run like a little monarchy. A lot of politicians breed, like have their kids come up and just follow them in their place. And so it's very insular. And the status quo is to hold power with the very few people who are currently in political positions and ensuring and making sure that their generations are going to hold power and control. So that's a fear that I have, right? Like, how do we, before we get to statehood or independence or anything like that, how do we fix our political system also, like as Boricuas, what are we doing to fuck shit up on the island? To not be, so that they know that that's not, that we're not actually gonna just like close our eyes and then hope that whatever they're doing is for our best interest, and then when it's not, be like, oh, they're all the same. I'm currently part of this, and part of the motivation for me doing this is me working with a candidate in Puerto Rico, in Fajardo, Puerto Rico, who is running for mayor, and talking to him about the deep, deep corruption of the current administration, who tried to pass a bill that would essentially allow mayors to appoint their the next mayor. So in this case, a father would appoint his son to be mayor. His son would appoint his son to be mayor, so on and so forth. The bill actually got through the houses, and I think it was stopped at some point, thankfully. But the fact that the bill even got through is crazy to me. And the state of politics in Puerto Rico is a wild, wild west. Like, engaging in this campaign, I came with a lot of preconceptions for turning out youth vote and going into different communities and addressing the issues that they're facing, and was met with a lot of obstacles that I wouldn't dream I would have never dreamed. People being paid at the ballots, cash, people on their deathbeds being casting ballots on their deathbeds, right? Like, this is some crazy stuff going on. And I think that when it's all said and done, we need to recommit to we need to recommit and rededicate ourselves to the wealth and the health of our island, because at the end of the day, Orlando may be here, New York may be here, but the island is where we come from, and that's our home. And if our home is failing, we'll forever be missing that piece of us. And I don't want to see it go in the way of white colonialism or become a breeding ground for tourism. So it's a difficult conversation. It's a difficult issue. I do feel like the question of statehood is being pushed to aggravate political parties and to get their base riled up, and that they don't want to have the conversation of cleaning up the current state of politics in Puerto Rico, because that would distract, that would actually give you attention to like what you need to be focused on. So I wouldn't be me if I didn't give you some historical context. I am a history nerd, majored in it, so I'll give you some for my people. So Puerto Rico was actually starting with how the United States got us. Puerto Rico was given to the United States after the Spanish-American War by Spain. And there were subsequent acts that identified what it meant for Puerto Ricans to be a commonwealth of the United States, and that later gave its people citizenship as well to the United States. And then in 1967, they held the first referendum where about 65% of people wanted to remain a commonwealth. We've since, on a total, had 5 referendums, and nothing has happened with any of them. The main topics of or sources of tension is language in the options that they're giving us, right? So in 2012, the question was, do you want to stay as you are or not? And if you don't, you have 3 options, which is statehood, independence, or sovereign nation in free association with the United States. And most people chose statehood. It was a 61% of those who said, we would rather something else. 61% chose statehood. 33% chose free association. 5% chose independence. There was another one in June 7, 2017 that is almost a fluke, because it was the language given in the ballot was protested, so that there were 500,000 blank ballots casted. And of the ballots casted, there are many more citing none of the above, so that they didn't want any of the options offered. The way that the language was created was basically bucketed in statehood, current territorial status, or free association / independence. And the U.S. Justice Department required us to add territorial status as a requirement to $2.5 million set aside by the Obama administration. So even in our quest for self-empowerment, our colonial overlords are telling us what we need to be thinking of and what needs to be included, what we're not allowed to be thinking of. And so it makes sense that this referendum was highly boycotted. And since then, that has greatly attributed to the general sense of nothing is going to happen, because we've had all these referendums. There's been no action from anyone. And we know now that when Trump was asked the question, he said absolutely not. No. Mitch McConnell called it full-bore socialism for Puerto Rico to become a state. This is for Puerto Rico to become a state. Trump said no. Mitch McConnell's a no. cool, we don't like y'all, we don't need you anyways. But really, like, I want to push us, and I want to push my fellow Boricuas to that when they're having these conversations, either with fellow politicos or friends or neighbors, but especially with our family, with our family members, with our brother, sister, mother, father, any other Boricua, we really need to be pushing the conversation past becoming a state or not, and how are we fixing the damage and the mess that they already made. We need to acknowledge and do an evaluation of the actual damage on the island and the actual infrastructure that's there and what needs to be improved. And we need to work on that without thinking, without the corruption or influence of outside parties. Am I saying that we have to do this alone? No, but it certainly doesn't mean that we have to become a state of an empire that has long exploited us and left us with nothing, left our people with nothing. No jobs. The jobs that are there don't pay enough. The quality of life is shit. I mean, they have beautiful beaches and the people are great. And we make that island paradise. But we should not have to struggle to live in our home. And I want to urge this conversation around statehood to be a demand of the United States to acknowledge the harm, exploitation, corruption, and damage they have done through ways of their policies and corporations and companies, and acknowledgement of that, and a pathway for Puerto Rican independence. And part of that must include asking for resources and money that we no longer have because the island was stripped and raped of those things. And our people have now forcibly been displaced. I think that's the conversation we need to be having, and I'm going to push it more.